So in phase 2, when you start taking the supplements that release the parasites, it was about 2 days into it, and I had just been on a hike and came back, and I was really feeling like rumblings in my stomach and like felt like, oh, something's gonna happen. And also on the hike that I was doing, I had been doing some energy work and release some quantum harmonization around releasing parasites specifically. So it was interesting. As soon as I got back from that hike, I was feeling really thirsty and a little bit dehydrated, and I passed my first parasite. I felt a little bit nauseous, and there was almost like an energetic shift. Like I could tell something was happening when I was going to the bathroom. And just so you know, the parasites are dead when they come out. So I released a tapeworm. It was about 12 inches, was my first one. And it was dead. If it grosses you out, you don't have to look. You could just go, flush, and then wipe. I did look, and I was like, whoa. And maybe because I had been on the hike, or maybe because I was just honestly really grossed out because it was the first time I had released anything, I was like nauseous and just like felt a little off. But I also felt such relief, like energetically is the best way I know to describe it. But when it came out, I almost felt like, oh my gosh, everything's gonna be okay, like this sense of calm. So, and I noticed that a lot of different times with different parasites that I released, I could tell when some were like almost the kinds that were impacting my mood or my emotions, and I didn't even realize it. So that was one really interesting thing. I also wrote down in my journal that when I released that first one, I almost had an autonomic response. I also noticed like when you're releasing, like if you're having a bowel movement, when there's a parasite in there, there's a different smell to it. At first, they were looser stools. And so it took my body, I would say, 3 to 4 days to really get used to being on that phase. And that went for any new phase. So anytime I started a new phase, it took my body like 3 to 4 days to kind of get used to those pills. So at the beginning, maybe my tummy was a little bit more upset, or my stools were a little bit different. But in phase 2, I would say my stools were loose for the first few days, but then they normalized totally. And it is important that you keep going to the bathroom 2 to 3 times a day, especially when you're releasing the parasites and when you're detoxing, because you want all of that to move through. And if it's not moving through, you can get a lot of detox symptoms or like die-off symptoms. So that's just something to note. The things that I did to support myself is I put essential oils on my tummy if my tummy was a little upset, and that helped. Energy work. The other thing that I noticed was that throughout that month that I was releasing parasites in phase 2, I did have some interesting die-off symptoms. I had neck pain and headaches, which I have this certain type of neck pain and headache that gets triggered into me, and I've had it for years, since 2020, and I've done everything. I've done craniosacral, I've done physical therapy, I've done massage, I've done myofascial release, I've done visceral manipulation, I've done Tibetan cranial, every modality I could think of, and I'm a physical therapist. So everything I could think of to help this certain neck pain, headache situation, I tried. And it's interesting, a bunch of different practitioners who are pretty intuitive, like a craniosacral therapist and the Tibetan cranial person, a lot of practitioners would tell me, it feels like there's some sort of viral component, or they didn't use the word parasite, but they're like, it feels like there might be some other thing going on, not just, the tension in your neck. And so I didn't really even think of this prior to doing the parasite cleanse, but what happened was during phase 2, those symptoms came again. So they kind of flared up, and I had the headache, and I had the neck pain, and I had like this dizziness that I get. And it was like my symptoms exactly, and they were die-off symptoms, because after those moved through and I passed some more parasites, those symptoms went away and haven't come back. And so I feel that there was a parasitic or some type of toxic component to that pain that I was having. And the CellCore products helped me a lot. So that was exciting. The other thing that happened to my mom actually in phase 2 was she had this chronic cough that had been going on for years, and every day she would cough up mucus, and she wasn't really thinking about it, but she noticed and realized that during phase 2 that cough completely went away. And when we did some research into it, there's actually a kind of parasite where the eggs and the parasite can be in the lungs. And so she had that, and that cleared, and her cough went away. So there can be things that show up or happen that aren't necessarily expected. So it's really interesting. I recommend keeping a journal or a log of some sort during your protocol, because there might be things that happen that you weren't expecting or that you don't realize until after. I did also notice, I started noticing a change in my cravings during phase 2. So, for example, somebody had celebrated a birthday and I had a small slice of cake, and I was completely satisfied with the one slice of cake, which has never happened to me in my life. I always want like 3 more slices. I'm never satisfied, but I just felt like so satiated and so content. And it was just like emotional for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is how your body is designed to work. Like, yeah, that was delicious and I'm happy, I'm satisfied. So that was a fun change. I can remember too, during that phase 2 month, which actually in the comprehensive protocol, phase 2, you do for 2 months. During that phase 2, I did have some ups and downs and cravings. So it's not like they were gone completely, but there were times where they were gone. And then I could tell there were some times when maybe I would be craving certain foods again. And it was so interesting. Every time that I had a night where I was like, I need chocolate, I need sugar, I need this, I really want this, I really want this, like that craving, the next day, almost always, I would release a tapeworm or some sort of parasite. And so it was very interesting in that way too. I kept track of the parasites that I could see easily, and I'm up right now to about 17 tapeworms. And there was one other type of parasite that I'll have to look up the name to. I don't remember it right now. And it can just vary from person to person, but it was interesting. Like I said, if it grosses you out, you wouldn't have to look. This next part that I'm going to tell you about, I'm telling you because it could happen to you. And if it does happen, I want you to just be prepared for it. But if it grosses you out, you can just end the video now. It is possible when you're releasing a parasite for a tapeworm to be you go to the bathroom and eliminate, and it's possible for a tapeworm to kind of be still hanging from your butt. And so when you go to wipe, it could come out then if you don't notice it, or if you notice it, you could be like, oh, there's a worm hanging. So you have options. And I know this from personal experience. So you could just choose to sit there a little longer, which is what I did the first time. And it eventually I could get it out without touching it, because I was like, ew, this is gross. The second time I was watching my 2 kids, I didn't have the time to sit there. So you can also just wipe or kind of pull on it and to come out. Do not pull on it from the middle of it. It will rip, and that's gross. You could just, though, take some toilet paper so you don't have to touch it and go, close to your bottom and pull, and it'll come out. Or just wipe and it'll come out. That does not happen every time. A lot of times it just goes out in your stool, and there are other people who've taken the protocol and it's never happened to them. But just in case it happens to you, that's the grossest thing to me that has happened. But you definitely can tell when you're about to release a parasite, because you kind of feel that kind of rumbling, maybe not pain, but for me, almost a little bit of cramping in your tummy. I did notice I released more parasites around the full moon, which I wasn't sure that would happen, but it did. And I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to share about phase 2. I will make more videos for each phase as I go through them. And if you have any questions, please reach out. Or if you want to know anything specific, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And thanks for watching.